So when you read Margaret Sanger and hundreds of other top eugenicists, federal government chiefs, state governors, it's all their letters back and forth to each other and even handbooks they published for social working. Social working was founded to carry out racial hygiene, to spy on the community, to go around and kidnap people's children. That's why we always hear the stories about Hitler. Hitler would take Germans' children. The state would steal their kids, and Russia would steal people's kids. Russia the communists picked up the same eugenics plan, which was, again, funded by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds on record. I mean, if you just go to the encyclopedia, I don't just mean Wikipedia because it's inaccurate a lot, but actually what Wikipedia has on the Rockefeller Foundation is accurate because I've bought their books. I've actually read their minutes, the congressional testimony. But you can go to other online encyclopedias and read and then link through to the Rockefeller Foundation's own federal filings, where it's all eugenics. The whole foundation's for eugenics, and how they funded the Soviets and the Nazis, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, how they funded the Human Genome Project at Cold Springs Harbor, the birthplace of U.S. eugenics. The head of it had to step down last year, remember? Dr. Watson, for saying blacks weren't human on the news. They're not trying to find out all your genetic codes because they want to be sweet to you, folks. They're finding out for race-specific bioweapons, as even the Austin American-Statesman reported 2 years ago about Dick Cheney in a policy report saying we need to deploy race-specific bioweapons to kill certain races. And the Austin American-Statesman finally wrote a good story and said, why is Dick Cheney talking about wiping out certain races? And they've even got weird African black leaders that go to these conferences and talk about wiping out most of the blacks. But I guess they get all this money and all this power from the globalists, so I guess they get off on it. I mean, this is serious business. And, I read this a week ago on air, but I'm going to cover it again right now. ABC News covered it. Tomorrow I'm going to play a clip of it where they describe them as superheroes and put David Rockefeller's head on Superman. I'm going to play that tomorrow on prisonplanet.tv. So you can actually see it, not just the audio of it. Dealing with this about, all these world leaders met secretly at the Rockefeller Foundation at their university because they care so much and want to help African children. Meanwhile, you actually read what the Times of London, interviewing the head of the foundation for the article, they admit, no, it was how to reduce population. That's how they're helping the little children. Then you find out how they're doing it. It's breaking up their families, having CPS kidnapping their kids, drugging their kids. In my film Endgame, I have the head for the state for psychiatry testifying before the legislature. Representative Susanna Hupp, a great lady, she says, well, why are 68%, this is in the film Endgame, she goes, this is Texas testimony, they said, why are 68% of the foster kids on multiple psychotropic drugs? They said they have bad genes. We're having to do this because they have bad genes. That's just made up. There's no test. They just say, we put 2/3 plus of the kids. 68% is over 2/3 of the kids on psychotropic drugs. Now listen to this. Billionaire club in bid to curb overpopulation. Now remember how Margaret Sanger and others, when you read her documents and her letters, it's all, we've got to make them think we're helping them and we're helping the children, that we care about them, and that we've also got to run the equality groups and claim that there needs to be equality for blacks. This is how we'll get control of their communities. Right now they've got their own stores, their own businesses, their own colleges. They're becoming wealthy. I mean, folks, blacks had 10% illegitimacy in the 1940s. They now have over 90% illegitimacy. Whites had 95% legitimacy. Now it's past the halfway point where less than half of whites' children are born into a two-parent family. You say, don't attack one-parent homes. We're not. The issue is you're 3 to 4 times more likely to end up in prison or on drugs. The system knows that. We are Homo sapiens sapien. We're meant to be in little tribal units with a man and a woman. We want to beat the New World Order, folks. Stop fighting with your husbands and wives. Team up. It's the family against the world. That's how the elites operate, but they teach you to implode your family so the state can have their way with you. And I have the mainline textbooks where they say the family belongs to the age of barbarism. I remember about a year ago I mentioned a textbook I covered on air that the University of Texas uses, University of Texas at Austin, for all their social workers, that says families are obsolete, belong to the age of barbarism, and are a disease. All family members are mentally ill. Families are mentally ill. Everyone needs to be reeducated. And people didn't believe me, so on the prisonplanet.com forum, hundreds of textbooks got scanned and put up all saying the same thing. It blew everybody away. It's always worse than I'm telling you. Now, listen to how this is all put out flowery and nice. But this goes further than ABC News that just said, oh, the secret rich, they had a secret meeting to help black children, but they won't say what they met about. And then played weird Super Friend music in the background with Ted Knight announcing them, the Super Friends and the League of Justice, with the heads of Ted Turner and David Rockefeller literally on superheroes' bodies. The average moron on fluoride and Prozac and shot up full of mercury watching that thinking, oh, they're meeting in secret for my own good. And they're only having to report this now because we keep exposing their secret meetings and making films about how they're meeting to carry out eugenics. My film, 2 years ago, released, Endgame, documenting it all. Now major news. Billionaires Club in bid to curb overpopulation. Oh. And you actually read what the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation says they're doing with $80+ billion. They say it's for creating mosquitoes that fly out and bite people and then inject them with viruses to sterilize them. You can't make this stuff up. But when you hear on the news, oh, helping black babies. Oh, and Bill Gates' daddy's the head of Planned Parenthood. Oh, that got awards from Hitler and gave awards to Hitler. But they don't tell you that part. Billionaire Club in bid to curb overpopulation. America's richest people meet to discuss ways of tackling a disastrous environmental, social, and industrial threat. Some of America's leading billionaires have met secretly to consider how their wealth could be used to slow the growth of the world's population and speed up improvements in health and education. And they admit the education to teach you not to have kids. And see, that's what the global carbon tax is. They brag that carbon isn't bad. We're carbon-based life forms. The planet's based on carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, and sunlight. Those are the 4 ingredients. But by taxing that, they say they're going to shut down the amount of resources that are available to where you can't afford to have a child. This is why they have to bankrupt the world economy. Openly read the writings of the former Treasury Secretary. Henry Paulson's a big eugenicist. All of them are. This is a cult. And so stealing and thieving and setting up tyranny is all good because it's for your own good. And at the end of the article, they say, why all the secrecy? They wanted to speak rich to rich without worrying anything they said would end up in the newspapers, painting them as an alternative to world government. Because, see, there already is a world government. See that little statement? They don't say there's no world government. They say, oh, an alternative to the world government. And it just goes on here to go over how they have to reduce the world's populations. Now, let me tell you how cold-blooded these people are. Let's say you believe that the world population has to be forcibly reduced by 80% as the United Nations Biological Diversity Assessment 1996 and 1989 state. And that's conservative. Most of Dr. Pianka here at UT says forcibly, use Ebola to get rid of 90%. But he at least is somewhat moral in his evil. He says, I'm ready to die, and so is my family. We all want to die. Well, Pianka, don't let me get in the way. You think there's too many people? You go first. Oh, but you have an important message to impart with all those biology students that write white papers saying you're too liberal. All humans must die. Yeah, just Google Dr. Eric Pianka, student PhD white papers, human parasites, and you'll read hundreds of published PhDs of people 5, 10, 15 years ago who, guess what now? You Google the names of the PhD students? Guess where I found out most of them work? Bioweapons labs. Oh, yeah, it's no big deal. They just write white papers saying, oh, I don't, Alex Jones. In fact, that's how I first learned of it. When they were attacking me, sending me threatening emails saying, read my PhD from 8 years ago. Dr. Pianka is a genius, and you just can't grasp that he's trying to save the earth. Humans are a parasite, as you will see in my PhD. And then we post her little PhD.
Humans are a parasite. We would be better off with total extermination of the human population. By the way, I work in a bioweapons lab now.
And you can go look at her in a white lab coat. You ever seen 12 Monkeys? They're throwing it in your face. It isn't funny. You understand me? What you're hearing is the most hardcore, key, on-target, sinner of the New World Order information you'll ever hear. And the only reason you're hearing this is because they don't have total control yet. They can steer the planet, but they're not in control yet. But they almost are with their global government, cashless society. They're going to use phony carbon taxes and fake terror to do it. Stay with us. Second hour, straight ahead.